You're watching the Isaiah Factor Uncensored.
And welcome back to the second half of the Factor Uncensored. Thank you for hanging in there with us. People are upset, angry, and even attempting to boycott a new film released over the weekend. The movie stars Oscar winner Viola Davis as a leader of the all-female army in Africa in the 17 and 1800s. Dr. Shepo Sherry joins me from the University of Houston to talk about why people are accusing Sony of whitewashing history.
Many people love Viola Davis. She's rarely involved in any controversies except with the Michelle Obama duck lip thing, but that's a whole nother story. But now there are people out there who are hoping to boycott her movie that she and her husband produced. First of all, your thoughts on just the controversy surrounding this movie, The Woman King?
Well, I'm personally disappointed by the movement to boycott the film. I think first and foremost, we have to celebrate the film as a piece of artistic production, and might I add, Black artistic production. This is a film that is obviously led by a Black woman actress, and she also has a number of female leads from not just the United States, but all over the African diaspora. There was a very deliberate and intentional move by Davis to not only think about a portion of history in which we see Black females as powerful, I think a real move to redefine Black femininity. And here we have, of course, the controversy around the historical factors of the Dahomey kingdom being complicit to the slave trade. And what I think is beautiful, perhaps, is that, you know, all from my perspective, all media is good, because it gives us an opportunity as viewers, as the broader public, to actually discuss this. I think that the movie is a starting point for us to think about how Africans were complicit in the slave trade. But I think the broader message that Davis is pushing for us to think about is just how complicated people are, and how complicated African people were in the historical moment in the 1700s that her movie is based off of, but also just the larger continent in and of itself. We're talking about a place that in this moment is constituted by 54, sometimes 55 countries. Mm-hmm. This is a place full of diversity. So we can't just sort of take these take a movie and then just move it across as if African people are a monolith.
I have two questions for you, Dr. Sherry. Number one, I don't know if you've seen the movie yet, but is this a whitewash attempt of true history? And do you think this campaign is a concerted effort that we don't realize it may be coming from someone or some group, and we're just falling in line with it?
I think there are multiple factors at play. I think first and foremost, some of the sort of pushback is coming from the intellectual community itself. The intellectual community, of course, myself being a representative of the intellectual community, is very much wedded to the nuances of history and really pulling out what's happening in a specific moment with various groups of people. I think that's very important. I think it's critical, and I actually think it gives us a place to speak as historians, but also as just moviegoers. Mm-hmm. I think there's another part of the controversy, and that is that we are seeing for the first time a major US motion picture that's focused on Black women. And might I add, Davis is really intent on having dark-skinned Black women represented in this film. She calls it a magnum opus. Part of the reason she says that is it has taken her a very long time to be able to cast people in the way that she envisioned it, to be able to meditate on the fact that there was an all-female a military regiment in Africa, she's received pushback while she was creating the film in terms of just having male sort of male presence in the film. Mm-hmm. And she is pushed back, as well as the writers, directors, cast have pushed back, and they really wanted this to be an opportunity for us to see Black women differently.
But do you think it's ruined with this controversy? Obviously, it was #1 this weekend at the box office, but do you think this controversy has ruined that and harmed any other future projects like this?
I certainly hope that that's not the case. What I do know about Viola Davis, and I think we can all work to this understanding, is if you are reading her memoir, Finding Myself, which is recently released alongside this film, one of her principal agendas, what she aspires to be, is to humanize Black people, and specifically Black dark-skinned women. And I know that that has been a challenge for her. When you look at her whole history from Juilliard and her training there, and some of the restrictive measures that that institution took as they trained her, to even her work in Hollywood, her early work in Hollywood. So I think in many ways, she is equipped to take on the pushback that she's receiving. I think she is resilient. I think this is an opportunity for us not to boycott a Black production, but it is an opportunity for us to go and see it, to talk about it. This is actually, I would say, a charge to us, having come out of COVID in some respect, and not having the kind of human connection. This is the opportunity, and I would say for Black people, to start those book clubs again, to meet in churches and mosques, and to have these conversations, very difficult ones, right? So I'm not suggesting that the Kingdom of Dahomey was not complicit in some form of slave trade activities, but that is not the whole picture that we need to grapple with. We need to understand that slavery depleted the African continent. We need to understand that it totally, the scale, the brutality of it, sort of reconfigured the place. These are conversations that I think we've been having off screen. Right here in Houston, the Shrine of the Black Madonna, these were conversations between African Americans, West Indians, and African immigrants right here, having these hard conversations. And I think this gives us one anchor text to pursue that line of conversation.
This conversation isn't over just yet. We'll continue talking about the Woman King and some African history you may need to know. And welcome back to The Factor Uncensored. Actress Viola Davis and her husband were among 2 of 4 producers who produced The Woman King. It was #1 at the box office, but there's some controversy and backlash involved with the movie, and we take a look back in history to see why.
Why there's so much controversy surrounding it in Africa.
So the Dahomey Kingdom was expansive, and you know, it kind of comes into history in a complicated way. You sort of allude to it by talking about this notion of a whitewash version of things. Well, we hear about this all-female military regiment actually through a lot of the travel logs of European travelers, and they actually call them these this Amazon female regiment. The descriptions are horrifying. They describe them as bestial. They describe them in ways that fetishize them sexually, that objectify them. But the key thing I want us to talk about today is, I think, the angle that Davis was trying to take. This is a regiment of fighters, of warriors that are constituted across time and space, across ethnic groups that come together, that defend the kingdom. At its height, we're talking about 6,000 warriors that are defending this kingdom. the kingdom itself did get some of its wealth from the slave trade. And what I think we need to think about, without falling to this sort of simplistic morality place, right, where we're looking for the good guys and the bad guys, is really understand that in our conceptual toolkit for understanding the ethnic and political differences of African people, that there was this opportunity in the 1700s, 1729, when you had female warriors who are pushing back, who are maintaining the sovereignty of an African state. And I think oftentimes we think about, and we fall prey to historicizing Africa as simply a repository of the slave trade, right? Like a space in which we could extract human lives, and then they became laborers in the Americas. And she's trying to do something different here. And I actually think her closing words on the last day of filming are quite useful to understanding the agenda. She says, you know, the thing about what we do is that we're able to transport ourselves back in time. Mm-hmm. You can be whomever you want to be. And for Black people, sometimes the only thing that we've been able to rely on is our own imagination. And that's critical here to our historical understanding. We are not going to get sole historical truth from a movie. We are going to get bits of historical truth. There was a historical consultant based out of Princeton University. I think he did a fantastic job, but it doesn't necessarily get to the issues about the slave trade and how the Dahomey Kingdom participated.
All right, Dr. Sherry. Well, at least it's prompted this conversation. And even for some Blacks here in America who don't know about the Dahomey Kingdom and the women warriors, it forced them to learn. And now they're involved in this conversation like I am with you today. And hopefully more people will do more research and get involved. Dr. Sherry from the University of Houston, thank you for joining us here on The Factor Uncensored.
Now, despite the controversy, The Woman King reigned supreme at this weekend's box office, with $19 million in ticket sales, taking it to #1.